Hey everyone, RogueGold here, welcome back to the Division 2, and today I want to chat about the Dust Storm event. Now, ever since we had the Halloween event last year where we saw the devs transition these type of events to have a larger scale, to just have more investment behind them, since then I've been doing a review video for each one that we've gotten, talking about its biggest strength, its biggest weaknesses. Now, fortunately, it seems as though the vast majority of the community agrees that Dust Storm here has redeemed this type of event model after the very divisive Cherry Blossom event that we had last season. And so, on that note, I would like today to talk about how exactly that happened, what the biggest wins are of Dust Storm, as well as a few areas where I still think we could see improvement. So, yeah, pretty simple, but we'll get right to it. If you enjoyed this one and you want to see more from me moving forward on the Division 2, then be sure to subscribe. Wanted to give a super quick shout out and reminder that we have just under 48 hours to go on our RogueGold store summer sale. Not only is it your last chance to grab some limited items like our Manhunt themed jersey, but also if you enter code RogueSummer26 at checkout, you will get 15% off your entire cart. That runs until the very last minute of July 31st, so thank you so much if you choose to check it out. That said, a major shout out and thank you to all of our channel members who already go above and beyond in supporting the channel and what I do. I truly could not pull off what we do around here without your support, so thank you so much. But, alright, let's get into the discussion. So I figured we would simplify the approach here this time and just break this video down into talking about pros and cons about the event. Those two sections will be timestamped down below, and then of course throughout we will just reference back to prior events that we've had. So beginning with the pros, for me, the biggest win and the coolest thing about the Dust Storm event has to be the world of transformation and the atmosphere. Now I know that there's a whole lot of you out there who do not care about this stuff nearly as much as I do, but as somebody who's been playing the Division 2 for 7.5 years now, who's been playing the Division franchise for over a decade, I really appreciate when the devs can go out of their way to make these areas and worlds that we are so familiar with feel new, feel refreshing, feel fun to explore again. And we've seen them taking steps to get to the points that we're at now with the Dust Storm event. Of course, Halloween, Winter, Cherry Blossom redecorated the base in really fun ways. They kind of pulled back on that a little bit here. Of course, Haven did get a bit of a facelift, but clearly where a lot of their attention went on that side of things was in making the world of Lower Manhattan feel completely transformed. So much of the map has these new sand pockets sitting across the ground. Of course, you have like the wind turbines that have been placed that added the immersion, but obviously the highlight here is the weather system. The fact that the entire skybox looks different, things light differently, and when you get in the middle of a raging storm, if you didn't already know the Woney map like the back of your hand, you could very easily get lost and just run endlessly. So for me, that is one of the coolest things that they pulled off here, was just making things feel so new, so refreshed. But on to the things that I think people will care a little bit more about. Let's talk about the combat pacing. Aside from the key discussion, which we will get to, this was of course one of the biggest contention points, if you will, of the Cherry Blossom event, because not only did you have to wait sometimes quite a long time to get these Kitsunibi squads to spawn in and eventually get to fight the Ronin, but then of course there was the entire controversy about how it was discovered that you could spawn the Ronins indefinitely. A lot in the community found that to be very fun, but as we all know, the devs patched it out and that created a whole lot of drama. This time, as they confirmed on dev streams, they took the inspiration and the pacing and the fun of that moment where the Ronins were spawning, albeit unintendedly, and turned it into an intended mechanism via the Raging Storms, where you can run around and get the Dust Devils to just spawn in back to back to back. That is super fun. I know I've seen some people who are like, why do we even have the Calm Storms that go in between these things? I think it's still nice for pacing. You have a little bit of downtime, a little bit of breathing room, and then things kick into high gear. You can also supplement that by grabbing the beacons in between, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, for me, the pacing here, also having it just be in the open world and not limited to a single bounty space, that for me has made the pure gameplay of Dust Storm the most fun out of any of the 4 major seasonal events that we've had in the past year. A quick note on this before we move on to talk about keys and rewards. One thing that I wanted to give props for that I haven't seen a lot of people talking about is the boss design. I personally found Black Lung and Paul to be the most interesting and unique bosses that we've gotten out of any one of these events. events. Paul in particular, I think it's really cool that he does not have a nameplate, that he throws out these decoys. That pairs very well with an enemy like Black Lung that demands your attention by walking right out in front of you, hip firing an LMG, even if at the end of the day they cannot really stand up to our optimized striker loadouts that we all have. Still some of the cooler boss design that I think we've seen come out of one of these events, so that was really cool. But alright, let's talk about keys and rewards. One of the big changes here on the key side was that as opposed to the prior Winter and Cherry Blossom events that dealt with keys and caches, this is the first time that we've seen them use a deterministic system as opposed to an RNG one, and I think the vast majority of us can agree that this is a better approach. On Heroic, at least, you take out 10 enemies, that gives you a key every single time, and because of the consistency of the spawns, that means that you have a lot of control over how many keys you're getting in a given period of time, so things just feel much fairer now. They feel more rewarding, and I think that has boosted the morale for a lot of people. Layered atop that, you then have two changes that I really appreciated, and I hope we see them carry forward in future events, and that is the daily key boost, as well as the fact that the storm beacons for this event reset on a daily basis in combination, and we've made a video on this on the channel, but what this means is that if you only have 30-45 minutes to play in a given day, that initial play session and window is the most optimized and ideal time to farm the Dust Storm event every day for its 3-week duration, because for your first 150 kills you get half the requirements for getting a key, and it means that once a day you can run through and grab all 20 beacons, which not only give you a drop from the gear cache pool, but they also guarantee a squad spawn, which can pick up the pace during the calm storm when otherwise you're waiting on a timer. So once again, it just puts more choice into the player's hands about how they approach this event. If you just want that maximum farming efficiency, play in that window and then log off till tomorrow. Or if you really want to get those rewards from the caches right now, you can grind all day. It'll be a little bit slower, but you'll still make progress. And so I think it was in my Cherry Blossom review that I said these events should really lean on the core tenet of generosity, and that is exactly what it feels as though they've achieved here. This event respects your time. It gives you a lot of rewards regardless of how much time you can put in, and I think that's a really good thing. The final big thing under the pro section that I wanted to hit on was the reward quantity here, and I'm not talking about what is available in the gear cache. We'll get to that in the next section, but specifically when it comes to the apparel cache as well as the revamped personal donation track for the community chest. The apparel cache is more or less the same as the last two events that we've had, but again, I love how many items are in there. 43 I think it was in total, and the fact that the completion reward was a skill VFX for a skill that we previously had none for, the scanner pulse. Even if that skin itself ended up being a little bit underwhelming, I still like that it was something new, something novel. And then on the community cache side, huge win to give this 2 exclusive weapon skins. You get a prototype Rabbit D50 out of there. It just feels much more compelling to put those keys into compared to Cherry Blossom. I don't think I completed that to get the arm patches. I didn't care, but this gave players a reason to be generous, to donate a bunch of their keys. It's a big reason why I think we got to the 10 million mark in the first week of the event alone. So really good stuff there, and I hope we see the same general level of quantity continue in the future. Alright, but now let's shift over to the con section, because yes, there are still things that I think could be improved here for the formula. The first thing I want to hit on is the big topic that a lot of people have been discussing, that being the fact that non-god roll mods are appearing quite frequently in the gear cache pool. Now, I feel slightly hypocritical talking about this because it was in the Cherry Blossom event review that I was like, for the future, wouldn't it be cool if we had a chance to get like 13% protection from elites mods in these caches? But I do think some reinventions as to what can drop from these caches could be worthwhile to explore. I know in the past some people have suggested protection from elites mods. What if you had a rare chance to pull a 13% mod out? That would be motivating for many, myself included. I still have none to this day. What I was really suggesting there, though, and I was far from the only one who had this opinion, was not that they should flood the gear cache with these mods that a lot of veteran players won't want, but that if there was a really low chance that you see a fully maxed out protection from elites mod pop out of there, that would feel very rewarding and very cool. Now, I did want to point out that we had Alex, the game director, comment on this very thing recently. Somebody asked why they decided to add gear and skill mods to dilute the loot pool here, and Alex replied saying, I hear you, and I understand that it can be be a bit tough to get the exact thing you want if you're a veteran player. At the same time, we have a lot of new players who will benefit greatly from this event to help them gear up while also helping them with their mods library. And while I think that is a noble attempt and noble reason to try and go for this, I just don't know if it's landed quite in the way that we should continue with moving forward. But here's how I would go about it. I would keep the chance to get mods out of these caches, but frankly, I think they should be god rolled every single time. That said, these should be a rare drop. They should have a far, far lower chance than the 16.5% that we see right now. That way, yes, when veteran players pull that 13% PFE mod, it will still be very exciting to them, at least for the majority of them. But when a new player gets that as well, they can then add a god rolled mod to their library that they didn't have before. But then, to fill the void that is that larger drop chance that the mods take up right now, I think that should just be general pool exotics, frankly, because that is another thing that will service both the new players and veterans. If a new player pulls out to St. Elmo's, they've never got one before, fantastic. They can now go and run and have fun with that. But for veterans, when they inevitably pull out an item that they already have, at the very least, they can still deconstruct it for exotic components, which is a very valuable resource in today's endgame and progression economy. So that's how I would handle it personally moving forward, but I'd be very curious to hear your thoughts on it. All right, these next 2 points here are admittedly very minor and huge nitpicks, but for one, in the context of Dust Storm specifically, I would have loved for there to be a small bit more recognition when you're transitioning to these different types of storms. One great example that somebody gave on my stream this week was that when it transitions to a raging storm, why not have that like air raid siren play around the streets of New York? That would have been really cool. Not only just a little cherry on top in terms of the immersion of all this, but also just that extra little alert that, hey, you're transitioning into the raging storm, you have a limited time to capitalize, get on it. And then the other one that I wanted to point out was the fact that the Dust Devils themselves are kind of boring. And I mean that in terms of their visuals. For all of the past events that we've had, you either had the mini Warhounds, which is basically like a new enemy type. You had the Krampuslauf, who had these cool like masks on them. The Kitsunibi, similarly, were visually distinct with their masks. But the Dust Devils really just look like standard Rikers. I think they just have small little goggles on. When this event dropped early on the server, some player discovered that the Dust Devils had these cones over their heads, and even though that would have been a bit comical, it at least would have stood out more than I think the final design for the Dust Devils have. So yeah, even if it just feels like you're fighting the same faction that you're accustomed to, I would like them to stand out a little bit more visually moving forward. Okay, and then the final point here, even though this is not really a con, but just a suggestion moving forward, I think what this event has made clear is that given there are sufficient and enticing rewards behind it, you can really pump up that community chest goal count. If you did not see, we hit 10 million key donations for this back on Tuesday, meaning in 1 week's time out of a 3-week event, we completed the entire challenge. And so if for no other reason than to give people an incentive to continue grinding this into week 2 and 3 of the event once they've already unlocked the majority of the rewards, pump that total up, take us to 20 million, 30 million. Is it going to be a grind? Absolutely. But imagine you get to that last week. We need like 3 million more keys. Everybody's tired, but you got to keep going. I just feel like that would cultivate a very fun moment in the community. But again, this all hinges on the idea that those personal donation track rewards remain enticing, remain interesting. But if done correctly, I think a higher goal total could be very cool to see. Well, there you have it, everybody. Those are my full thoughts and my review on the 2026 summer event for the Division 2 Dust Storm. Overall, if you could not tell, I'm very pleased with this event. I've had the most fun with it out of any of the ones this past year. I'm quite excited to see where they take things from here now that we're headed back to Halloween this October. And yeah, really the turnaround here that we had from Cherry Blossom, which arguably was the least fun one so far. It's been good stuff. So I would love to hear all of your thoughts down below, whether it's on the points that I touched on in this video or your own thoughts on the event. Let me know what you've been thinking about it so far. What worked? What improvements do you hope to see moving forward? Let me know. I'll read through them all. That's going to do it for me today, though. Thank you all so much for coming by and watching, and until I see you next, RogueGold. Ow. Oh! We just got a Ravenous! Haha! I might not be friendly. Let's go.
Coming to the Division 2.
Let's go!
And